Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's panel discussion titled The State of the Opposition in India. Before we proceed with the discussion, I would appreciate it if you could mute your videos and microphones throughout the session. If you have any questions to share, please forward them via the Zoom chat. We will consolidate the questions for the panelists to answer during the Q&A time. This discussion is also being live streamed on ISAS's Facebook page. This afternoon, we are delighted to have with us 4 distinguished panelists. The panelists are Dr. Mukulika Banerjee, Associate Professor, Department of Anthropology, London School of Economics, United Kingdom. Dr. K.K. Kailash, Professor, Department of Political Science, University of Hyderabad, India. Dr. Ashutosh Kumar, Professor, Department of Political Science, Punjab University, Chandigarh, India. And Dr. Rahul Verma, Fellow, Center for Policy Research, New Delhi, India. The session is being chaired by Dr. Rajoy Sen, Senior Research Fellow and Research Lead, Politics, Society and Governance at ISAS. I now invite Dr. Sen to start the session. Dr. Sen, please.
Divya, and a very good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are. And a very warm welcome to all the panelists and the audience. I won't take up much of your time except to briefly introduce today's topic of discussion. There are many who believe that the current dominance of the Bharatiya Janata Party has ushered in a one-party dominant system, much like the Congress system of the first decades of Indian independence. We at ISAS had organized a roundtable, in fact, on the so-called BJP system nearly 2 years ago in 2020, where, in fact, Rahul Verma had participated, which led to a special series in the EPW as well as a special report published by ISAS. Today's event can be seen as a sequel of sorts to the 2020 event. It is a well-worn cliche that, but one that is worth repeating, that a vibrant opposition is essential to a healthy democracy. Political scientist Rajni Kothari, who coined the term Congress system, theorized it as a party of consensus, namely the Congress with parties of pressure, the opposition at the margins of the political system. The latter, rather than constituting a real alternative to the ruling party, influenced governance through pressure on like-minded factions within the party of consensus. The BJP system is undeniably very different, with an opposition that is external to the party, but at the same time, fragmented and marginalized. Today's panel discussion will focus on the state of the opposition in India, where the Congress has been in decline since 2014. The Aam Aadmi Party, or the AAP, is harboring national ambitions. Some regional parties, including parties like the Trinamool Congress and the TRS, are holding their own and eyeing a pan-Indian role. And there, of course, have been citizen movements such as the farmers' protests in 2020-21. There are also a few general themes associated with Indian democracy that will hopefully come up for discussion, namely the phenomenon of opposition governments in states not lasting their full term or being brought down, depending on which way you look at it, the vast difference in the financial resources that the ruling party commands in comparison to opposition parties, and finally, the use of state institutions to pressure the opposition or dissenting voices. The panelists should also look ahead, always a perilous task, to the prospects of the opposition in the 2024 general elections and the possibility of an opposition coalition. This is also an appropriate moment with regard to the upcoming assembly elections in Gujarat and Himachal Pradesh, which will be held over November and December, with the results for both states out on December 8th. So with that very brief preface, let me now turn to Rahul Verma, who has written a lot on the reasons for the Congress decline and also on how the grand old party might be able to revive itself. I'm sure he'll also talk a little bit about the recently held presidential elections in the party and perhaps a little bit about the Congress's prospects in Gujarat and Himachal. And just let me tell you that Professor Ashutosh Kumar will be joining in a bit late. So depending on when he joins, he'll either be the third or the fourth speaker, if that's okay by the other speakers. Rahul, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ranjay. I'll share my screen and let me know if it's visible. Can everyone?
We can see your screen now. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. What I'm going to do in next 10 minutes, I'll try to answer the big question on the state of opposition, and then happy to take questions on current state of Congress and what Congress. Some of this is inbuilt into the argument that I'm going to make, but more details we can take that during the Q&A. Okay, so basically the two questions that I'm trying to focus here is what are the options before the opposition parties till the parliamentary elections of 2024, and is the Congress party in any position to challenge the BJP at all, and what kind of strategies it is going to employ. Is it going to think about a more serious coalition strategy that has been pursued thus far? And for any analysis of the current moment or in the run-up to 2024, must acknowledge that we are living in a dominant party system, as you rightly pointed out in our introduction. So any confusion about that, that BJP keeps on losing elections or they get pushed back here and there, yes, the BJP dominant system is not equivalent to Congress system of 1950s and 60s. There are differences, but make no leave no doubt that we are in a dominant party system, and this system is basically built around 5 elements. It has gained tremendous ideological consensus. So yes, it excludes a large section of Indian society, including Muslims, but we can see that the ideological hegemony of BJP is sort of spreading. Second, BJP keeps on losing election, but what it has managed to do in last 5 to 7 years, it is on a path of electoral ascendancy. So even in places where it was very, very weak, it has now become a formidable player. Look at the Eastern India, where BJP used to get 2 to 4 or 5% votes, is now either governing or is the main opposition. Third, they have a very formidable election machine, organizational machine, which to my mind at the moment is unmatched and perhaps in the recent Indian politics. And that machine is not just online, it's also on the offline, and both complement each other very, very well. It is presided by one of the most charismatic leaders we have seen in recent moment. The kind of popularity Prime Minister Narendra Modi carries is unparalleled, and perhaps unparalleled at the moment in the world. No global leader at the moment stands or commands that kind of popularity in their own country. And finally, this is an effect of dominant party system. This is a feature of a dominant party system that you will see a disarrayed opposition. So we keep asking these questions on opinion pages and television debates that why is opposition not coming together? It's actually hard for opposition to come together. It's a feature of the system. That's what happened in 50s and 60s. When Congress was around, it was hard for opposition parties to coordinate. And so there are implications of the system. The first implication, as you rightly pointed out, the state, like the power and reach of the state is basically getting in some ways fused with the party apparatus. And that's helping the party in power or any dominant party in power in sort of setting the agenda on what politics and elections are going to be conducted. Second, any dominant party. So in Congress system, Congress enjoyed that resource advantage. So the money or resources that we talk about, the gap that BJP enjoys now was the same or perhaps greater, or Stanley Kochnik has written about this in 62, 67 election, what kind of resources Congress used to command vis-a-vis Bharatiya Janata Party or Communist parties. And third implication, which we are witnessing both in the political arena as well as in electoral arena, because of a dominant party and disarrayed opposition, a lot of politics is going to basically get spilled over on the streets. So NRC mobilization, farmer mobilization, many of these things which can be subsumed within parliamentary politics will continue to spill over on the streets. And second, electorally, and this was very much visible during UP elections when I traveled, people have already chosen their parties. And so when they mention any issue, there is issue rationalization happening. So if someone is going to talk about, poverty, price rise, and other things, most likely that person has already decided to vote against BJP. And so issue rationalization is what is going on at the moment. And if you want to think about the opposition, there are many shades of the opposition. So there is no one opposition. As far as I can see, there are three, like you can club opposition into three groups. One, what I call as a dormant opposition. Congress for a very, very long period of time seems to be in a dormant state of affairs. They are not making moves to revive themselves. Though Bharat Jodo Yatra in the southern India is gaining traction, but I'm happy to have a more concrete discussion on that towards the end. The second opposition, which is what I'll call as nationally ambitious opposition, you mentioned that Aam Aadmi Party is trying to enter into spaces where it was not present. And it seems like that it's going to hurt the Congress party in states where, like Gujarat, where it's trying to rise. TMC for the moment seems to have fizzled out, but next year, when smaller states in Northeast are going to poll, we would see a lot more movement from TMC. So TMC may not gain traction in Goa or in Northwest part of India, but in Eastern India, they are likely to have some resonance. And now TRS has also joined the bandwagon, though we don't know what the possibility of that is. And third one is what I will call as a contained opposition. So in states, these parties will continue to defend their turf and fight against BJP, but nationally, they don't take any big position. They don't even act against BJP in parliament. They voted with the BJP's presidential candidate in July. So a party like BJD will try to defend its turf in Odisha, but for national election, I'm not sure whether they would like to align with a party like Congress or become part of grand coalition. And so, but all these three are under the bucket or umbrella of electoral / parliamentary opposition. The second kind of opposition we have seen in recent years is the civil society opposition. There is continuous mobilization on the streets, be it on the issue of citizenship, on price rise, on farmers. So what it has created, or perhaps it was already present, and because the parliamentary opposition or electoral opposition is not able to take up these issues, there is a strong wedge that is being created on economic as well as identity-related questions. We are witnessing high social polarization. Recent survey data do indicate that the young voters and unemployed are unhappy with the BJP, but will they vote against the BJP? That I don't know. And so, as I pointed out earlier as well, I think the inability of parliamentary opposition to channelize these grievances is likely to continue spilling over on the street. So we will, on one hand, see high street mobilization, but low mobilization during elections by opposition parties. So how does dominance end? And again, all of these are simplistic arguments that I'm making, simplistic in terms of like big buckets. So either dominance can erode suddenly, there is a crisis in the system, mobilization takes place. For example, in 75, emergency was there, opposition coordination happened, and you could challenge the Congress party then. Or the the erosion is going to be slow. So BJP is not going to basically decline in one election. It will be a slow decline whenever it begins. We even don't know whether they have reached the peak of their dominance. And so that slow decline can only start happening when inbuilt contradiction start producing diminishing results. There have been political crises, which the opposition could have used, but it seems like, for example, during the COVID, there was a political opening. Government seemed absent, especially during the second wave. But survey data suggests that if government was absent, opposition was super absent to be able to help people. Second, I think Prime Minister Modi in his recent Independence Day speech basically focused on two key things. He said these are the two key crises or two big problems in Indian democracy. One is corruption and second one is nepotism. And I think they have been doing this all along. But in the run up to 2024, these twin things are going to basically become a main mobilizing plank for the BJP, as now the targets are also going to be state level parties. Most parties in India suffer from these two problems. There is high level of corruption, as well as many family members basically heading the parties. And so these two pillars would be combined to produce a very powerful narrative. And I'm not sure what opposition parties, especially at state level, will be able to do to counter these narratives. And so there is some sort of crisis of credibility. In North India, in both UP and Bihar, law and order became a very, very important issue on which BJP managed to gain votes. And how did it do that? A party which used to have disadvantage among women voters till 2014, one managed to bridge the gap, and now it is gaining much more votes from women voters, both in UP and Bihar. In 2022, across all states where BJP won, BJP got more votes among women voters. And so they can use the law and order argument against a party like Samajwadi Party or RJD and mobilize women. In UP, the gap between SP and BJP among women voters was 10 percentage points. So we can quibble over the numbers, whether it was 10 or 12 or 14 or 16, but 10 percentage point gap in a voting population, which is 50%, is producing more than half of the gap between the two parties, right? And so if the opposition parties do not manage to figure out, and especially in Northern India, how to mobilize women and at least get the same kind of votes that BJP is getting, they will be in serious trouble in near future. Last 5 minutes, I'll just end here, something on Congress. So Congress now had a very significant moment in their history. A new president has been elected. The president appointed a 48-member steering committee till the new CWC is chosen next year. And we just collected some information on this 48-member committee. More than 40% of this committee is 70 plus. So all are oldies. Only 1%, Manikam Tagore from Tamil Nadu, is of 47 years. Other than that, everyone is plus 50. Half of the committee is more than 70 years of age. Second, 50% of this committee did not contest either 2014 or 2019 election. Only 3 members, 2 of them are Rahul Gandhi and Sonia Gandhi, who won both 2014 and 2019 election. And so I was given Mallikarjun Kharge's own record of not losing any election between 1972 and 2019. I was hoping that the new committee is going to get more members who are battle hardened, who know how to contest and win elections. But if this is going to be the state of affairs within the Congress party, it seems the more the things change, they remain the same. So not much hope on that front. To conclude, elections are still 18 months ahead of us, and it's dynamic space. Things can change very quickly, but it seems that while options may seem open, the competition is largely closed. And when I say competition is largely closed, it's going to be BJP versus. So one poll is going to be BJP, which will be far, far ahead of its nearest competitor. The party will remain nationally buoyant. I don't have any doubts about it. But in states, like some of the states which are going for polls, especially next year, BJP will face challenges. In Karnataka, Chhattisgarh, Rajasthan, BJP will have a hard time. And it may be possible that BJP loses all 3 big states next year, and then everyone will start thinking like 2019 that, oh, this is the end of the BJP or decline of BJP. But nothing like that is going to happen in 2024. These state elections are not an indication of what will unfold in 2024 elections. There is a competition, as I rightly mentioned, the game for the second spot. AAP is one of the sort of like parties which is trying to gain the second spot, lowers the possibility of any grand coalition against BJP in 2024. And this has already become evident in Gujarat 2022, where AAP is likely to challenge Congress in a big way. And so, in short, basically, this competition for second spot is going to fragment all efforts at resource mobilization. And because there is no anchor party which can bring these smaller state level parties together, competition and fragmentation will keep BJP nationally buoyant. So I'll stop here and happy to chime in during Q&A.
Thank you, Rahul, for the overview of the one-party dominant system under the BJP, as well as providing a summary of the opposition politics and focusing a little bit on the Congress as well. So may I now turn to Kailash, who may I request to sort of talk about the regional parties from southern India, particularly the DMK in Tamil Nadu and the TRS in Telangana. And if he has time, maybe also say a little bit about the communists who have effectively been reduced to a state party in Kerala. Over to you, Kailash.
Yeah. Thank you, Rananjay, for having me on this discussion. And as you mentioned in your opening remarks, in a dominant party system, and when we speak about political parties, very often the focus is only on the government. But I think when we speak of democracy, it is as much about the opposition as much it is about the government as well. So I think the focus on the opposition and what the opposition does is important, and therefore I think this discussion is useful. Because in representative democracy, the opposition is an integral sort of part of the whole system. And I think the more active it is, the more challenges that it puts to the government, I think it enhances both representativeness as well as accountability. Now, the second point that I thought I should put down was that any type of opposition, the nature of the opposition, the space that an opposition has, depends largely on the institutional framework that we have. Okay, so we in India, we have the majoritarian parliamentary system. And as a result of this, you are going to have an adversarial system. That is, there is going to be constant confrontation between the opposition and the government. And the aim is to get to power. The aim is to be the alternate government. So every move, every policy, every action of the government is going to be opposed. Now, since there is no gain electorally to support the government, so you are going to see constant opposition to everything. So there's going to be this adversarial system. Now, Blondel once wrote that the concept of opposition or the term opposition is actually a parasitic concept, in the sense that it is dependent on the government and what the government does that gives meaning to the opposition. Okay, so I think therefore we need to understand the state of the opposition in reference to what the dominant party does or the government does at a particular point of time. Now, my brief is to discuss the role of state-based political parties, especially in the South, with specific focus on the DMK and the TRS. Now, both these political parties are currently governing or ruling parties in their respective states. Both parties are opposed to the BJP in different ways and in different degrees. I must add that the BJP is not a significant player in the legislative arena in both these states, but is very active on the ground. Okay, the party on the ground, that is the BJP, is very active, and it has been constantly attempting to occupy the opposition space. That is, in Tamil Nadu to cut into the AIDMK's space, and in Telangana or to the Congress. So what exactly are these two parties up against? So what is it that the BJP is that you are opposing? Now, the BJP, as we saw in Rahul's presentation, is the new electoral machine. It is something that what the BJP does today, tomorrow somebody is going to sort of copy it and take it forward. Okay, that is the model now that has been set for other political parties to sort of emulate. Now, the BJP is a party that just to look at what has happened over the last 8 years or so, you see that it actually doesn't rest. It is continuously, constantly challenging and opening up new spaces. There is no break. It works sort of 24/7 into how we can expand. Now, it is a party, I think, that counts for it that only winning counts. However it happens, it doesn't matter, that we have to win, we have to expand, we have to capture power. So that's absolute clarity about what a party is there for and what the party wants to sort of achieve. Now, this BJP is very different from the BJP of the 90s, of the Advani-Vajpayee era, where that BJP was willing to sort of work with other political parties. It was willing to wait its time. It was willing to make compromises and then take yourself forward whenever opportunity sort of presents itself. Now, if you look at Sridharan's work on how the BJP sort of expanded in the 90s, you would see that it was the third party in a couple of states, and therefore it would join hands, it would enter into alliances, it would sort of allow the ally to have more seats, and therefore slowly and gradually sort of make its way in a particular state. Now, today the party is in a hurry. There is no space for those compromises. There is no space for any other political party. So you could see that the party uses all sorts of methods, whether it's defection, whether it's resignation, whether it's threat, whether it's use of state machinery, anyway. So the voter, the legislature, the constitutional office, governor, nothing seems to matter. And therefore, if this is the machine that you are up against, for the opposition, the challenge is immense. So when I'm talking of opposition here, I'm basically speaking in terms of a set of behavior and activities that political parties do to oppose or to get against the BJP in this particular case. Now, I see an interesting sort of difference between the TRS and the DMK. And this has to do with the nature of the party system in the two states. Now, the Tamil Nadu case is a completely closed party system. Okay, so it usually alternates between the AIDMK and the DMK, and that is where the BJP is attempting to sort of put its finger in. Telangana, again, closed. Usually between the Congress and the TRS, whereas and the BJP until where the TRS sort of, I think once it cut into the Congress, once it choked the Congress, once it encouraged defections, once it killed the Congress, it sort of left space for the BJP to sort of enter. Whereas in sharp contrast to what in Telangana, in Tamil Nadu, despite the AIDMK being weak, the DMK has let it be. It has sort of allowed it to sort of work its way out, despite all the contradictions. It has not gone on to sort of destroy or extinguish the party. So in that way, in Tamil Nadu, the space for the DMK is very less as compared to what has happened in Telangana. Now, in Tamil Nadu, the DMK strategy has, and I think there's a sharp contrast between the TRS and the DMK when it comes to taking on the BJP. So what has happened in Tamil Nadu is that the DMK has moved into what is, I think, possibly the weakest spot of the BJP, that is to move into the regionalist arena. So the DMK, over a period of time, has actually started raising almost all the old issues that it raised in the 60s. So it's pretty much the DMK stuff, okay? Like issues like center-state relations, the issue of language, the role of the governor, the issue of finances, the issue of language. All these have sort of are elements that the DMK has used to sort of keep the BJP at bay, or to keep the BJP in sort of check. In the sense, the BJP can't take on these issues and at the same time continue to be a polity-wide party. So there, the BJP is sort of still finding its way out as to how it can sort of make its way into Tamil Nadu. Now, in the TRS, in sharp contrast to the DMK, has moved away, or I don't think it had a regionalist sort of stand in the first place, but it's actually looking outward. Okay, so the TRS is sort of shifted and wants to become today the BRS, Bharatiya Samiti. Now, the TRS's critique has been on the BJP's larger policies, like, for example, the CAA, the issue of secularism, the issue of farmers' bills. And the chief minister himself has been visiting states outside the region to make space or to sort of sell the the TRS vision. And for instance, he's been going and paying money in states where farmers were killed, farmer families were sort of affected by the farmer laws. He's been paying money to people in other states where their families lost life, soldiers' families who lost life, etc. So, and the idea is here probably to get a national profile and then take on the BJP there. So I don't think that doesn't seem to be a viable strategy, but that's what he's thought about. At the same time, he's also pushing a model of welfare, which he puts it, the TRS puts it in opposition or in sort of contrast to the BJP model. But basically, this model is handing out cash transfers to different sections or different groups. Now, the DMK, therefore, is content with the state, whereas the TRS is looking out. Now, the BJP is had its national executive in July in Hyderabad, and it had something called Mission South. That is where you want to expand in the South. And as part of this, and not merely in the South, but everywhere, you have ministers and key members of the party actually going and visiting various constituencies, interacting with party workers, and so on and so forth. And the last point I'll make is that both the DMK and the TRS, in contrast to, let's say, the Congress, have avoided attacking and challenging the leader at the top of the BJP. Okay, because I think this is also shows a level of understanding with what happened in 2019, a greater level of political maturity among, say, political parties, that this could backfire, because the moment the BJP supporters see a negative agenda, there seems to be some sort of consolidation that takes place. So both the TRS and the DMK have, at the moment, concentrated more in terms of an ideological line or a programmatic line to take on the BJP, and have not gone on a personal thing. We'll speak about the Communist Party and other political parties in the question and answer session. Thank you.
Thank you, Kailash, for again mapping some of the elements of opposition politics and giving a sort of nuanced analysis of the differences between the ways that TRS operates in Telangana and the DMK in Tamil Nadu. So, could I turn now to Ashutosh, or would he prefer to go in? Ashutosh, okay, if I turn to you now? Yeah. So, Ashutosh, of course, has had a ringside view of the spectacular rise of the Aam Aadmi Party in Punjab, sitting where he is in Chandigarh. So he will, examine the prospects of the AAP as a national force, something that had not really worked out in the 2014 elections, as well as its prospects in Gujarat and Himachal, if there's a little bit of time. Over to you, Ashutosh.
Okay, thank you very much. I must concede at the outset that I've been doing something which I'm heavily engaged, so I've not really paid proper attention to this webinar, but I would make my points. First, I would like to respond to the two speakers who have spoken very briefly. One, that, when a party does well, there are certain factors like organization, ideology, leadership, party finance, campaigning. So one, we all know that BJP rise has been largely attributed to Modi factor. So there lies the weakness also. If you see the CSDS data, everybody knows that there was a huge chunk of the voters who voted for BJP because of Modi. So nobody can deny. I mean, we understand that BJP is a cadre-based party, organizationally very strong and all, but we can't deny that partly or significantly the victory of the BJP can be attributed to Modi factor. That's the first point. Second point, we should also understand that, as has been pointed out by others also, that BJP victory in 2019 or in 2014 had to do something with its alliances also. If you see the Maharashtra or you see Punjab, BJP was in alliance with a regional party. So you can't say that BJP victory was all of its own. And how many seats were involved in Maharashtra or Bihar or Punjab, one can see it. That's the second point I wanted to say. Third point, that when we refer to this leadership factor, I mean, especially what Rahul talked about, the dominant system, Congress as a dominant party system and electoral, there are certain two crucial differences I can see. That when Congress was the dominant party, they had a very strong state level leadership. And in fact, when BJP had this ascendance in the 90s, or even in 2014, at that time, you had Raman Singh, you had Shivraj Chauhan, you had Vasundhara Raje Scindia. So you had strong state level leaders. Do we have the strong level leaders? Recently, we read in the paper that Raman Singh wanted to have a kind of statewide campaign, and he was stopped. It came in the Indian Express. So that is also that gradually you are finding that the BJP is becoming centralist party. BJP high command politics is coming up, which was not the case when the Congress was the dominant party. Congress had a plethora of the state level leaders, very strong state level leaders. Second difference, very crucial difference, that when the Congress was the dominant party, Congress high command or the top leadership would never interfere in the state level politics. You know, the state level politics, if there would be factional fight at the state level, the center would not interfere. In the Nehruvian India I'm talking about. Right now, what is happening? You have the elections in Himachal and everything is being decided at the center. Modi, Prime Minister, is sitting there, the Home Minister is sitting there, MLA tickets are being decided, right? So this is something which is a crucial difference. The third crucial difference I see is that when Congress was the dominant party, because of its ideological flexibility, those who would not like to vote for the Congress, they would like to vote for party X. But knowing that party X is not going to win, then they would go for the Congress. So Congress was a perennial second choice for many voters because of its ideological middle ground, which is not the case with BJP. BJP is ideologically very strident, and over the period, it is becoming more and more strident. So those, I mean, if you vote for BJP, you are certain to have a certain ideological position. And if you don't like BJP ideology, you are not going to vote for BJP in any case, even if you know that the party you support is not going to, or the candidate you want to vote is not going to win. So winnability factor. So that's a crucial difference, which is to the disadvantage of the BJP, as I can see. All these three factors which I referred to. There was another point which I wanted to refer to when we refer to the another thing, that when the Congress was the dominant party, and we all know these points, there's nothing new about what I'm saying. But then minorities, 18.4%, right? And what was the Congress? Congress was like this position that you have almost 1/5 of the population very sure that not voting for you. I mean, the CSDS data, 8% of the Muslims only reported voting for BJP. That's a crucial weakness, I think. And Kailash always makes a very important point, and he has written also in this thing. Another factor is that the BJP is no longer coalitionable. You know, if you see the rise of BJP, BJP rose on the soldier of the state party. You know, they had a tactical alliances. You see Odisha, you have many states. Now, is Congress coalitionable? Is BJP coalitionable? Does BJP wants to become coalitionable? I mean, you had this story of Nitish Kumar. You know, Nitish Kumar had, and I think there was a certain factual correctness also, that the Janata Dal United was going to break up. You know, like the Maharashtra, we have seen what happened. So that is another. There is a kind of a fear, you know, like the 1996. You remember, like the 13 days prime ministership of Atal Bihari Vajpayee, and at that time you had Vajpayee, and now you have the present Honorable Prime Minister. So you can understand the leadership also, the nature of the leadership. That's also a very major factor, that what kind of leader you have at the top and what kind of image the leader has, or the people who matter in the party, the kind of image and the ruthlessness they have. So state parties would think twice. Any state party would think twice. Right now, it's a heyday, but politics, nothing survives forever. The things keep changing, and as this corner guy has probably written that anti-incumbency is very much invention of Indian electoral politics. As far as I'm supposed to know something about Punjab, so I would speak about Aam Aadmi Party. These people are more expert on those things. When we refer to Aam Aadmi Party, in Punjab, it was not like that the people wanted Aam Aadmi Party very badly. I mean, 92 out of 117 seats tells you that there was a strong wind of support, and that was a tsunami or wave or whatever you use in the electoral politics literature. It was essentially, and I've written it, and I think just much before the election I had forecasted it, that there is going to be a clean sweep, because it was basically, in Punjabi you use the word khundab, so there was a kind of so much anguish, so much I would say anger against the two parties which were entrenched party. So Aam Aadmi Party victory was not so much about Aam Aadmi Party organizational ability or using the resources or making fantastic promises, because every party in Punjab makes fantastic promises. So that's nothing very unusual. That in 2012, I remember Akali Dal said that we would give 5 marla land to everyone. Kailash has lived in Chandigarh, knows the prices of the land in Punjab, and giving 5 marla land to every landless person and something, every scheduled caste person, one can understand. So that is not the case. The main thing was that Punjabi voters wanted to teach a lesson to these two parties, Rawaiti parties, this Akali Dal and the Congress. That was the main reason. Now, as far as right now, you have this scenario that Aam Aadmi Party is trying to try its luck in Himachal. It was very ambitious about Himachal. Now we find that it is concentrating more on Gujarat. And in fact, there have been the meetings which have been cancelled, the meetings of Kejriwal. And right now, there is a common complaint among the Himachal Aam Aadmi Party leaders that the party high command is not really paying much attention to Himachal Pradesh. Now, if you see Himachal Pradesh and if you see the CSDS data, the states where generally upper caste have gone for national parties. And Himachal is one state where the upper caste are in majority, the Rajputs and the Brahmins, right? And the OBCs are very less, and you have a sizable population of the scheduled caste and scheduled tribe. But the OBC is very less, middle caste are almost like very insignificant. That's the same story like Uttarakhand. So that gives traction to the national parties. The regional parties have never done well in Himachal Pradesh. You can see the history. There have been factionalism. There have been regional party like Pandit Sukram and all, but they never have succeeded. So that way, I think an Aam Aadmi Party is still, whatever the media projects it, and media is projecting, as we all know, why media projects a party and why doesn't it project another party. There's a lot of political economy of electoral finance. So, but then the ground, the voices from the ground is that in Himachal, it is going to be Congress versus BJP. And given the electoral history of Himachal, there has been always change of the government. And so I don't see any reason why it would not happen this time in Himachal. As far as the Gujarat is concerned, I have no idea what Aam Aadmi Party is doing. I mean, it is doing all kind of theatrical, what you call it, something like the other day I heard Kejriwal speaking in Gujarati and all those promises, old pension schemes and all. This is something I don't know. I mean, I'm not expert on Gujarat. I have no idea about Gujarat. what is going to happen. But as far as Himachal, I can tell you that there is a much more propaganda rather than the reality. It's not that Aam Aadmi Party is going to do much, and to say that Aam Aadmi Party would cut the vote of Congress, that is also not going to happen. That is my guess, and I always met my guesses, and I think I'm quite confident about it. So to tell that everything is gloomy and there's nothing going to happen, and the BJP is always going to be the electorally dominant party, I'm not really this middle class and this. Basically, I teach in a university, but I also feel that this extremism or this rabid communalism is not acceptable to the middle classes, and the middle classes have been the greatest supporter of the BJP. So it's to say that this ideological hegemony or BJP as a hegemonic party, I don't see that there is much credence in that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ashish, for focusing a little bit on the Aam Aadmi Party, but also very importantly contrasting the Congress system with the so-called BJP system. And this has been a sort of running theme in all the three presentations up till now. Finally, we turn to Mukhalika Banerjee. She will go beyond party politics and look at sort of citizens' engagement with democracy. She'll probably draw on her excellent recent book, Cultivating Democracy. If she has time, she might also look a little bit at West Bengal, which has been the field of research for several years. And she'll also look at some of the critical democratic deficits in contemporary India. Over to you, Mukhalika. I think you need to unmute yourself. Yeah.
Sorry, I think by now we would know these things, but that's my mistake. Thank you, Ronuja, for giving me this opportunity to engage with fellow scholars of Indian politics, though I come from a very different discipline. Of course, I'm not a political scientist, I'm a political anthropologist, but all three speakers are political scientists whom I've read their work, I'm in conversation with. So we've been part of a conversation. And today I thought I would try and do something slightly different to what I have done before, but also speaking to and building on what my three great scholars of Indian politics colleagues have done before me. So if our brief today by Ronuja is to evaluate the state of opposition in India, I felt we needed to sort of zoom out a little bit from the detail that we've heard. We've now populated that very rich electoral landscape by our three previous speakers. And I wanted to zoom out from that detail to just ask the big questions about how can one evaluate the state of opposition in India? And for that, what do we need to do? The first thing we need to do is evaluate the state of democracy. We need to think about democracy in ways that goes beyond institutions. We need to look at those institutions, specifically electoral institutions. We need to look at what's happening to democratic culture. And given the scenario that I will present to you, and I'm very happy to be challenged. These are, when I think about these issues, this is where I am. If you disagree, you want to question my reading of the scenario, please feel free to in the discussion afterwards. But given the scenario that I present, the question then arises is what is possible in terms of political opposition, and whether in fact we need a slightly new language of analysis of Indian politics. So the first thing to note is that democracy, I'm an anthropologist, like I said, I think about democracy not just as an institutional framework, but democracy as both institutions, as well as trying to create a democratic culture. And under institutions, obviously elections are the most important institution of a democracy. It's not the sum and substance, but without elections, you don't have anything. And that's why for 25 years, I've been studying them quite closely. Local government is important. We need to look at democracy at all tiers of decentralization. We need to think about legal rights. We need to think about the separation of powers, judiciary, the executive, what is happening in those institutions, and what kind of formal citizenship each Indian has under in living in a democracy. Democratic culture, on the other hand, is what happens very much in between elections. It is those inter-electoral temporalities. It is about using the institutions of democracy to create a certain kind of society. That's what we mean by democratic culture. And therefore, when we say India is a sovereign democratic republic, the word republic there is really there to denote democratic culture in Ambedkar's terms of trying to create civility or fraternity, which basically in the Indian case means that you make solidarity, you create solidarity with people who are not like you, people who are of a different caste, of a different gender, of a different religion. How do you manage to create solidarities with them? And this creates a sort of substantive citizenship, not just citizenship in name on paper, but a substantive citizenship. And this, as Roger very kindly mentioned, is the sort of skeleton of the argument in my book, Cultivating Democracy, that is just out, but I won't talk about that today. But just to say this take on democracy as institutions plus culture, the fact that the word democracy in democratic republic stands for institutions, the word republic denotes democratic culture is what I'm arguing. So if we were to just look at the state of democratic institutions in India, I don't, to this audience, I'm assuming I don't need to illustrate each of these claims, but if you want me to illustrate them, I'll be happy to do them later. But I just want to stick to the argument. The first set of enforcement directorate and other enforcement organizations that we have, which are absolutely essential parts of running a free and fair democracy, a regulatory framework that you need both financially and for a number of other different kinds of engagements with democratic institutions. Those enforcement institutions have been manipulated, instrumentalized by the government in some ways. I would argue Parliament is a very important space for democratic deliberation and debate. And we know that and Ronuja has just published that wonderful book on the Indian Parliament. We know that what the number of days that the Parliament sits, the attention that is paid to it, the attention that the ruling party pays to it, and indeed, very crucially, the lack of use of standing committees, which are meant to scrutinize legislation, which then send back, make it better to consult with civil society groups, with advisors, with experts. It's that process that creates new legislation, whereas some of the most important laws in the last 7-8 years have been passed without discussion, like electoral bonds, like the farm laws, through doing it through a voice vote, no consultation. So what does Parliament actually stand for exactly at a time that a new building is being put up? One has to ask that question. When we say Parliament, do we mean Parliament or do we mean something else? Is it doing some other work of providing the artifice of what a democratic country should look like rather than the work, the hard graft of parliamentary work? The judiciary likely is, again, there are some cases, electoral bonds obviously loom large. We've had several changes of chief justices. There has been no time to listen to that case yet, and so on. Again, these are discussions that we can have. So therefore, we begin to get international indicators such as the VM, Varieties of Democracy, basically calling India an electoral autocracy. Now, I would say that India's electoral autocracy record, I think in many ways, we are concerned when we look at Israel, Brazil, in fact, the country I am in, Britain, the midterm elections in the US, everywhere that there is an election, we worry about a set of issues in each of them about the conduct of elections, what's going to be the outcome. But I would argue, and I'll just say this here, and you can challenge me afterwards, is I think India is way ahead in having actually anticipated a lot of the criticisms of the worries about democracy and actually got a system that is much way ahead of many of its counterparts in the other countries. In particular, I wrote Why India Votes before this book. My earlier book was called that, and I looked very closely at Indian elections for many years across the country, and have a whole chapter on the Election Commission of India. So Election Commission of India is one that I've followed very closely, and it does worry me that there are commentaries like the one on the right, where basically the Election Commission's constitutional mandate to hold free and fair elections, which was an immensely successful aspect of Indian elections, has arguably been compromised. And this is being now said. It was very striking yesterday with the Election Commission, the Chief Election Commissioner himself persuading the press at a conference just yesterday on why the declaration of the poll dates in Gujarat were not biased, that it was nothing to do with Prime Minister Modi's visit to the state, but it was looking at the bridge collapse and everything else. The fact that they had to justify it was interesting. Electoral bonds, the way I think this for me has been the complete game changer, right? So since 2016, now that you have 2015, that you have electoral bonds as the only way that you can support a political party, and that this is now available as knowledge only to the State Bank of India and therefore the government of India, has been a complete game changer, in as much as that you now have one party, the incumbent, exponentially in a different league of money and wealth to run their campaigns, to run anything else, than any of the other political parties. So to talk about electoral competition in this scenario is, I think, do we need a new language? I would say yes, but I'd be interested to hear what others say. The lack of a secret ballot, the fact that we now count EVMs, EVM by EVM, which is polling booth by polling booth, which means that when election results are declared, we know how every 1,000 people in a population have voted. And this, to me, compromises the secrecy very severely, as others have noted too. We can come back to these. Okay, so I can see 2 or 3 minutes left. So let me make the next few points. If we're talking about democracy as institutions and culture, then we really must look at what is happening to democratic culture. The first thing we say about the fourth pillar of democracy is the media holding the government to account. And I see this on a day in and day out basis in Britain, where the toughest questions are asked to the government. That's what makes a good journalist. Now, the fact that that has stopped happening in India, and journalists get jailed for asking difficult questions, and therefore the indicators are so worrying, should worry us. You need, in republicanism literature and political theory, we talk about this notion of active citizenship, that citizenship is not just going and voting at elections, but also constantly keeping yourself informed, holding the government to account, asking questions of your representatives. But instead of that active citizenship, what we have is vigilantism. We need vigilance rather than vigilantism. There is extreme polarization, which again, all of us know about. And there is this weaponization of misinformation, not social media generally so much as in particular what is being done with the use of WhatsApp. So as we know, Levitsky and Ziblatt's book, this second point that I think that breakdowns, that extreme polarizations can kill democracy is something that all of us should be worried about. I had to put in a couple of slides about Bengal, simply because it's always been such an interesting political landscape to study. When I first started studying West Bengal politics, and then in the late 90s, 1998 onwards, the left front was invincible. Nobody thought they would ever win an election, lose an election. So But every time there was an election, and especially with 99, with Trinamool Congress being set up, the campaign looked like this on the streets of Calcutta and West Bengal, beyond Calcutta. So you could ridicule, you could have cartoons, you could have funny verses, like one of them, the one in the middle, the short one says, Hate Boma Mukhe Prem, Eki Bole CPM. So you may have a bomb in your hand, but you speak sweet words, and this is what the CPM is about, and so on. So there was a lot of this kind of play of words of challenging the hegemony of the left front. That has changed. What you got in 2021 was this huge adversarial contest between Prime Minister Modi and Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee. And you had this sort of gladiatorial and extremely polarized situation where even Mamata, the kind of language, the vulgarization of language that happened was extraordinary. My colleagues earlier talked about how, I think it was Ashutosh just saying that other parties have had to behave like the DNA. And this illustration is so perfect for it, where it is the Trinamool logo that is suddenly, it is normally just ghashpul, they're just wildflowers. Instead, those wildflowers have now mutated into lotuses as well. And this kind of captures what is happening, that if in this scenario of compromise of democratic institutions and democratic culture is the only way to contest elections, to be like the BJP. But how do you do it when the BJP has so much more money through electoral bonds than anyone else? So where is the opposition possible? Is it going to be, therefore, outside elections? Yeah, if elections are so heavily skewed, where do you fight the battles? Where do you ask the questions? Where do you hold the government to account? How do you create solidarities in the face of polarization? And if the institutions are not there to protect your individual freedoms, then you have to obviously work outside the remit of any institutions. You can't rely on universities. The world over has seen revolutions through student movements being started, but universities in India are under severe constraints of academic freedom. And how do you create, therefore, if democratic cultures have been corrupted, how do you create new democratic cultures? And do we need a new language of Indian politics? So, and I just think that what is happening, therefore, and this is a wonderful drone video shot of the farmers' protests, but it is interesting that the only time an otherwise absolutely, as my colleagues have been saying, this invincible, all-powerful government has been held to account, has been asked to do a U-turn, was not through electoral politics. It was actually happening completely outside on the street by a massification, not only of numbers of people, but there was vigilance, there was sustained protest, and as I have outlined in a few pieces, that the culture of protest itself, the fact that it lasted 12 months, created a new kind of democratic culture of the kind that India would hope for. And so now Rahul mentioned the Bharat Jodo Yatra, so I quickly put in a slide on that as well, because it is interesting how absent it is from mainstream media. I often on my Facebook page, with my friends, I often from time to time ask people, has anyone heard of Bharat Jodo Yatra? And most people say no, because it's nowhere on anyone's television screens or newspapers. But this yatra of 3,500 kilometers is happening over a period of several months. Again, outside elections, outside institutions, creating a new kind of democratic culture. And we'll have to see where that goes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mukulika. In your own words, I think you zoomed out and sort of provided the political anthropologist's view, which is always useful as a counterpoint to the sort of standard views of political scientists. And that was a rich presentation on some of the democratic deficits which are critical, but also interesting insights into West Bengal. And I being a Bengali speaker, I was some of the humor presenting those slogans was.
They were specially for you, Ronoja.
Yeah, thanks. So, there are already a few questions in the chat box, but before turning to them, maybe I'll just use my chair's prerogative to quickly sort of come back to a couple of issues which were raised and which was sort of common to all the presentations. One was the idea of contained opposition that Rahul put forth. He talked about sort of three kinds of oppositions, and the contained opposition is parties that are contending with the BJP at the state level, but at the central level and in terms of national legislations, laws, they are not, contesting the BJP narrative. And the BJD, the Bharatiya Janata Party, is a great example. So if you could sort of talk a little bit more about that and how that also ties in with the idea that Ashutosh put forward, that the BJP is not coalitionable, to, if I got you correctly. That's something that Ashutosh was talking about. In that, I guess what he meant was any party that ties up with the BJP, faces the threat of being kind of absorbed or decimated at some point. So if Rahul and Ashutosh and the others, Kailash and Mukulik are welcome to step in and talk about these two sort of important issues while discussing the opposition space. Rahul, would you like to go first, or?
I think seniors in the room should start, but I'm happy to chime in.
Sure, why don't you start and then the rest can get.
Okay, so I don't see coalition, or it's a different way of looking at politics. So I don't align with people because I like someone. In politics, whether I align, likeness is just a very, very small factor on how coalition happens. It's a game of power. And game of power, things are decided by what kind of strength the two people who are on the table and what kind of weaknesses they are bringing in. So yes, you could say that Advani Modi BJP and Modi Shah BJP is different BJP because of the leadership personalities. So personalities matter, but Modi Shah are going to deal with allies differently compared to Advani and Vajpayee is also because the kind of strengths their party had, right? And so if BJP was sitting with 170 seats today, then Modi and Shah would also be acting like how Advani and Vajpayee were acting in 1990s. But with 303 seats, you are going to talk with your allies in a very, very different way. So that's point number one. It's not it's driven by your strength. So both BJP today is going to drive negotiations with any party because it's in a position of strength, and bargains happen from positions of strength. This is not, so this is a sort of like what I'm talking much more from a behavioral politics perspective, not from just Indian politics. This applies to everywhere. The second point, so is it coalitionable or not? Do people go to any party because they just like the party, or do they think they are going to get some benefit by aligning? And I think a lot of parties will still be willing to align with the BJP, even when they know that there is a threat that BJP is going to basically squeeze them. It's a classic dilemma, not just for parties, for everyone, to think both of their short-term benefits and also long-term survival. If I call a small party in UP and tell them I'll make you minister in my government, will they not come? Right? And so that what happened in UP. There are lots of small players who joined BJP. They got 2 seats, 1 cabinet. Because politicians are also at the end of the day interested in becoming MLAs and ministers and MPs. And they know by aligning with BJP, they will get a small share of pie now, because that's the dominant party. That's point, like, first answer to the coalition question. Now, whether we are in a dominant party system, whether this will last or not, whether we are in an ideological hegemony, I think it's a matter of basically degrees. So I don't think anyone is going to make this argument that this hegemony will last forever, right? Or BJP will continue ruling India forever. Everyone rightly pointed out, right? Like a few years ago, we had a Congress system. Mukulikaji pointed out when she started her fieldwork in West Bengal, it seemed left was inevitable. So in today's time, BJP seems buoyant, but that does not mean that BJP will continue to remain buoyant. There are always inbuilt contradictions that kept getting built, like, increasing. And so there will be a time. That time can be like in 6 months or in 2024, or it can last till 2029. Who knows? Because there will be a time when those contradictions will start giving diminishing returns. I don't see it now, and I don't know whether it's easy to see when those contradictions will outplay. And by ideological hegemony, it simply means that the agenda setting power is being determined by BJP or is with the BJP. It's not that everyone has become right wing or everyone follows what BJP's ideological position is. It's just that all politics is going to revolve around either in opposition or in support of what the dominant party does. That's why, like, we care about the party system, right? Because there is a player who's setting up the rules of the informal rules of the game. And I think on the I don't know what to say about like BJD. It's very much evident. Even Congress starts. We keep getting this. Everyone keeps calling every other party as a B team, but it may require a bit of like deep analytical analysis. Why is it in the personality of Naveen Patnaik not to be confrontational, or BJD parties like BJD are happy by just confining themselves to one territory and dominating, and not upsetting their apple cart in a way by basically being confrontational with the national level dominant player. So that also, in some ways, what and Kailash was making a very, very interesting point. See, when you are in power, you also, in West Bengal, TMC's eagerness to basically crush left created space for BJP to rise. And so what you do when you are in power also creates your opposition. And perhaps BJD knows this, that if we don't attack BJP frontally, at least we'll have the state for us, right? And so, but that's my hunch. Maybe others can add more on this.
May I come in?
Yeah, go ahead.
Dhananjay?
Yeah, please.
Well, in my limited understanding, why a coalition takes place, one round can be ideological compatibility, which is probably not there right now. We are not seeing that kind of coalition coming up. Otherwise, how would you explain Shiv Sena drifting away from BJP? The second round on which the coalitional arrangement takes place is the hope of broadening the social base. Third can be the opportunity to get a share in the power. The BJP is a party in power at the center, right? And fourth can be the leadership ambition, because most of these state parties are leader-driven party and the party supremo and all. Right now, we should ask whether the BJP fulfills any of these things. Is BJP ideologically compatible with any effective state-level party? Is BJP helping any state party to broaden its social support base at the regional level or at the national level, for that matter? Is BJP ready to share power at the center, giving them effective ministry? There was a time, Kailash would know, when the DMK and AIDMK would join the government, and they would always ask for the key ministry. You know, the commerce, IT, Maran, you remember. Or Chandrababu Naidu would be asking the central grants to the Andhra Pradesh, don't make any TDP minister, TDP MP minister, but give us funds. And he managed lots of funds for Andhra Pradesh. So the point I'm making is that right now BJP has absolutely nothing to offer to the state parties. So why BJP would be considered as a coalitionable party? You may be powerful party, you may be in power, but what you give us to, I mean, as somebody used the word, I think Kailash used the word ruthless. So, there's always a calculation. So parties would also calculate. So I fail to understand, Rahul, that what the state parties have to gain from BJP by making an alliance with the BJP. I mean, I'm absolutely, I have no idea about this. The second was this one point which is very clear is this resources and corporate sector. We should not. This also I wanted. Yeah. Mukulika ji said this farmers, in Punjab, like there was always a kind of absolute certainty. And that was something very surprising to me, that the farmers were absolutely sure that they are going to win. Something which was really, I mean, this thing tells you that, in Punjab, like right now, you ask the Sikh people, they are now considering themselves as minority. I mean, 20 years back, 23 years back, when I came to Chandigarh, the Sikhs would refuse because there is certain kind of, stigma being a minority, being called a minority. But right now, in Punjab, there is a distinct feeling that the Sikhs are a minority. And some people would say during this election, like, that what we have to gain, this temple and all, what we have to, I mean, we have nothing to do with this. So there's this thing also, this is a very important point, that you are not expecting support from almost 1/5 of the India's population. And then you try to build a majority. That is something which we used to say about Akali Dal, that they are trying to have a majority out of a minority. Because if you take out the scheduled caste Sikh from the Sikh community, then the support base of Akali Dal was like among the minority, and they were trying to, and that's why they had this coalition with the coalitional arrangement with the BJP, because it's helped them in broadening the support base. But right now, BJP is not offering any, BJP support base is very exclusive to BJP. That is my limited understanding. Thank you.
Right. Any further thoughts from either Kailash or Mukulika on this idea of being coalitionable, and why do, what is the rationale for state parties to or regional parties to ally or not?
I would like to ask Rahul also what BJP has to offer, right? I mean, in a tangible manner. Yeah.
I think one of the things Rahul mentioned was these tangible benefits like seats in ministry. This is applicable to the smaller parties, but Rahul, do you want to quickly respond to that? Or? I think you have to unmute yourself, Rahul.
I think let Kailashi and Mukulika chime in.
Sure. Any thoughts on that, Kailash?
Yeah, I'll just add something to, again, I think it was Ashutoshji's point about BJP not being coalitionable. I think we got to slightly nuance that thing a little further, in the sense that where the BJP can have coalitions, it doesn't need them. And where it needs coalitions, others don't need the BJP. They don't want the BJP. Okay, so that's the one difference. And then I think we also need to keep in mind that at the state level, what is your position? Are you in government or are you in opposition? That also has an impact on what your relationship is going to be with the center or with the central government. So that also needs to be factored in when we look at coalitionability and why parties sort of coalition. Another point to what Rahul said about, and it was to your question as well, about agenda setting and the hegemonic position of the BJP. I'm just doing some loud thinking here. I would want to say that I think it is also has to do with the dominant economic model that we have across the globe. Okay, so in that model, I think we have moved from some sort of decentralization or greater powers position to the local level to a greater centralization everywhere. Okay, economic decision making, I think they now assume that it's more rational to sort of centralize things to take decisions. So this, I think, has sort of gelled greatly with the BJP's idea of centralization and the whole idea of one nation, all that fits very well with the economic model. So I think it's just that the two have come together at a particular point of time, and so you have the BJP actually been able to push its agenda slightly faster than what would otherwise have taken a little more time.
Right. Mukulika, any thoughts on coalitionability or?
Not really. In fact, my only question is really to ask, even whether we discuss coalitionability or anything else, can we continue to talk about these things when the one party is so disproportionately wealthy? I mean, over 90% of electoral bonds money goes to the BJP. Can we continue to have these conversations as if, we used to use this language in the past when we discussed, and all of us have got together and had these discussions in the past. But my question really is, is that language still relevant? Why aren't we, what do you think? I mean, to my mind, it's bizarre to do this.
Right. Yeah, I think, to be slightly provocative, I think Rahul was, hinting at in his presentation that the Congress system, the Congress was the dominant party with, commandeering, the resources in a way could be comparable to the BJP now, and he used the famous term briefcase politics, popularized by Stanley Kochanek, which referred to the sort of fundraising capabilities of the Congress. So, Rahul, do you want to sort of quickly respond to this, or should there are a few questions now in the chat box?
Which one? Which one do you want? To Ashutosh, I think we are.
The enormous sort of command of financial resources. Would you say that this was true in the Congress era or the Congress system?
Well, certainly. I think maybe
it was not
85-15. Maybe it was 85-15. See, most times in Indian politics, whoever is in government has greater command over resources, period. Congress party till 2013 had more access to resources. Or for 2012 for sure, 2013, even the ADI data matches, and then basically BJP takes over. So whoever is in power will have greater access to resources. In a dominant system, the dominant party is going to have much more disproportionate access. That was the case this is what Kochanek wrote in Briefcase Politics, the amount of money Congress party had. In fact, I don't remember the name of the leader, but BJS leader in that interview said, we can't even contest. We have so little money, right? And so, but does that justify this kind of disproportionate access today BJP is having? No. And I think the impact, so BJP has certain other advantages, which basically makes them a much more sort of impactful combination. So it's not just that they have resources, they also have a much better organizational machine than Congress ever had on the ground. And which means that with that kind of money, they can basically generate a much more effect. And this is what we are seeing, plus the advent of social media, which BJP is able to utilize for its both ideological and electoral purposes. That all of that combined basically makes what Mukulika ji is trying to hint at is that the system does not look level playing. Basically, it has become so much inclined in favor of BJP that opposition parties are going to find hard to basically compete and win.
I think this is a question we could, go on debating. There's a normative set of questions, besides the political, but there's also a set of constitutional questions around the issue of electoral bonds, and the Supreme Court's kind of sitting on the issue, etc. But in the interest of time, we actually really, there's hardly any time left. So let me quickly turn to some of the questions that have come to my chat box, and I'll sort of deal with the last question, and that deals with Prime Minister Modi. And I think at least 3 of the presentations talked about the Modi factor and how critical it is, as we all know, to the success of the BJP. So this question is about the succession of Modi, whenever it happens, and sort of the next generation of BJP. I think the larger question being, after Modi, who, or as some people say, not after Modi, who, after Modi, what? So maybe if any of you want to sort of address that question, and I think that's something that I find being asked quite a lot in outside of India, and there is this interest in this question. So, anyone who wants to sort of
I don't think either political science or anthropology allows us to predict that.
Right. The shape of, okay, so there is no sort of, I'm not really sort of conjecturing who will succeed, but sort of looking at a system, the BJP system minus a Modi, what that would mean. I don't think we can predict the successor to that's I think fool's game in that sense. But anyone, Kailash, Ashutosh? Ashutosh, I think you just need to unmute yourself.
I mean, it would be very difficult to say that who is going to succeed Mr. Modi.
I'm saying the system without a leader.
Somebody, it's like asking Jawaharlal Nehru who would be succeeding you, and so Modi has become a colossal figure, and he has. Everybody understands this, that he has brought a qualitative change also in the leadership thing. And the machine politics. There was one difference I see, that when Congress had this machine politics, there were always regional chhatraps who were running those machines. Right now, the BJP machine, if there is a BJP machine, is too centralized, So there lies the weakness also, I think.
Yeah, so I think we can go back to the idea that you put forth. Again, I think the question was not directed at who succeeds, but the BJP system without charismatic figure like, I think, Kailash, like Modi.
Yeah, so let me try. So I think if you're going to ask this question, I think it's a wrong, we have not understood the party correctly. Okay, this is a party that I don't think requires personality, or it doesn't care for people. It's a party which is driven by a mission. There is a clear ideology. There is a clear goal. It is the goal that is pushing it. So individuals will come and go, but the party will move forward. Okay, so if they could so easily throw out or sideline people in 2014, the machine is going on, right? Yeah. So it will go. There might be a sort of a dip at a point of time, but that idea and the commitment that the party has to that particular goal, I think that will live on even after Modi.
Just sorry, Mukulkaji, can I get 30 seconds? Ronanjoy, the last seminar that you had organized, and this was the exact question on which I wrote, Modi, what is Modi's role in BJP system? And I agree with Kailash. Basically, even if you Modi in some ways just fast forwarded a pace of history. There are larger historical social forces that were at work. So rise of BJP, certainly Modi plays a very, very crucial role. But even if Modi wasn't there, this process would have unfolded at some point of time. And we would have seen something like this happening, maybe not at this scale, maybe not this early, but forces were moving in this direction. Even in BJP's defeat of 2004, Professor Palchikal wrote majoritarian middle ground, which is that the forces that had brought rise of BJP, even its defeat were very, very strong.
Right. Mukulika, did you want to intervene quickly?
Yeah, I just wanted to say two things. One is about the point that Rahul's just made about, post Modi, what we will see really is a democratic system that is so changed that it will require a certain command of resources to do what the BJP's capacity now is, which is linked to the point that Rahul was making about cadre politics and machine politics, that it has this huge ground capacity. Now, what I've seen in West Bengal, and I think West Bengal is a very interesting place to study the contrast between two very strong cadre-based parties. Right? We saw the left front and its cadres and what they were able to do. And I've seen the rise of BJP cadres in West Bengal. And it is whatever one says, and I've been a very harsh critic of the left front, but the left front cadres in the first place were not the creation of money, whereas the BJP's cadres are the result of very clever messaging around Hanuman Puja and money. So this money, the money, it's not the money, it cannot be bracketed off. It is the money that is creating the cadres. If you have one person in one district of Kuch Bihar running 1,400 WhatsApp groups, not WhatsApp members, WhatsApp groups, that person has to be paid. And there are millions like this across the country, and that costs money. So this is a network that is fed by the money that is coming in through electoral bonds. So, so I don't think we can talk about political organization or indeed the leadership at the top without seeing the role of what, this is not like the Congress system. This is not like the past. India is in a completely democracy 2.0 now.
Right. I think we've really run out of time, but just a couple of, again, questions from the chat box to sort of conclude today's discussion. One is, broadly on Hindutva, Hindu nationalist politics, and whether the regional and opposition parties too are appropriating or using some of the language that the BJP uses to varying extent. Would any of you want to sort of comment on that? Agree, disagree? Quickly.
I think Rahul answered this question. That shift that has taken place in 2004 has
right.
Everybody is in the same quadrant now.
The right word. Yeah. Okay. So that's.
And you remember that image that I showed you of the Trinamool flowers now becoming,
right.
That's what's happening. That's the BJPification of a lot of politics. That's the only way you can play the game now. Yeah.
And one last
yatra indicator. I mean, is this yatra of Rahul Gandhi indicator of things to change? Because he is completely, he is just focusing on substantive issues, and it's a kind of a different kind of politics which has been coming out from this yatra. All the voices and the speeches and the issues being raised, they are not like what Rahul said, reactive. I mean, it's not like that this yatra is kind of answer to the BJP kind of politics. It's a very different.
I think that's right. I think it is self-consciously outside electoral politics, isn't it? So the people joining it are people who are from civil society organizations alongside the Congress. But really what is happening is everywhere in India that the yatra passes through, hundreds of civil society organizations come, use the yatra as a meeting point and march. And today, G.N. Devi has, the great linguist, has a piece on the culture really of the yatra and the people in the yatra. And that's really interesting because it's like the farmers' movement. It is exactly the opposite story to a polarized India where a young girl who's been raped is asking for help. And what we get is young men standing around her, filming her, asking for help. Now, that's a pretty gruesome state of affairs, and that is one India. And I think there is a sort of completely different India that's being resurrected, or at least displayed, performed, of decency and civility. And that's what the contest is. It's not an electoral contest at all.
Right. So I think there are a few other questions in the chat box, but we are really out of time. It's a little past 5:30 in Singapore, so I guess it's the end of the working day, although it's the beginning of the working day or in the middle of the day for most of you. So, I'll end it here. Again, I think the Bharat Jodo Yatra is probably a good place, which has, rightly mentioned, has not found much mention in sort of media images and analysis, but it's going on, and it's sort of, I think, drawing an interesting set of reactions across India and from different kinds of groups. So that's something to sort of keep note of and to see whether the Congress and Rahul Gandhi can sort of sustain this engagement. I think that's one of the issues we've seen earlier. So on that note, let me just thank all the speakers for making the time at fairly short notice to participate in this discussion, and for the audience who have sort of stuck around till the end. Could we have a virtual round of applause for the panelists? And thank you once again for making the time.
Thank you very much for the invitation and for listening. Thank you. Bye.
Okay.
Thank you, Ranjay. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye,
Bye.
Mukul Kadi, Kailash.
Bye, Rahul. Bye. Good to see you.